Hello everyone, this is part one of a multi-part series on how to mod Battle Talent. This is going to be covering how Unity works, how the mod project works, how to do the things inside of them, tools like the icon helper, the address helper. We're going to go more in depth on those later in other tutorials, but I will explain, what they are, why we use them. And then also Blender, why we cut models in Blender, the difference between, concave and convex colliders, how to set up weapons in Unity, from everything to the hidden foes and collisions, to, again, the address helper, weapon trails. Stabs is going to get its whole video because people struggle with those. So first thing we're going to be covering, again, that's going to be how to download Unity, the correct Unity version, and the mod proj. So first link in the description, go ahead and download the Unity Hub. Just download this exe for whatever you're using, so Windows for most people. And that's going to bring you here. I have 3 projects. You won't have any. I still do stuff in Unity. That's my job. But yours is going to be blank. So once we have the Unity Hub installed, running, you can just go ahead to the second link. That's going to be the correct version of Unity, or 2020.3.48 F1 as of making this video. It hasn't changed in like a year or two. And then just go ahead and hit install, and that's going to bring you to the Unity Hub, into the install thing, and that's going to start installing it. Make sure while you're doing that, you add the Android build support. The Android build support is for Quest, so that Quest users will get your mod. If you don't have that, it'll only work on PC. Now, once you have that, we're going to go ahead and download the mod proj, either while that's downloading or if you want to watch it download, but it's a slow download. So we're going to go ahead, third link in the description, go ahead and hit code, and then download zip, and that's going to give you the zip file. That's going to be this here. Just right click it, unzip it, however you do, and that's going to give you this. And this here, the mod proj, mine has been renamed, is going to be the actual thing we're going to be running through Unity. If you open that up, you'll see it's got the resources, packages, everything, the assets, builds, that's going to be all the weapons and stuff. So once you have that, we can go back into the Unity Hub, hit add project from disk, and then go to where your mod proj is located and click the mod proj. You don't want to click the toolkit. You want the actual one, selected mod proj down here, and then you can hit open, and that's going to give you the mod proj right here, and then just go ahead and click it. And once you have that, it's going to look something like this. As you can see, there's nothing in here in this scene, but we have all of the files as shown before, all the weapons and everything. So that's how you download the Unity. Next up, I'm going to be explaining some stuff in it. First off, going to be the template wizard. You're going to go ahead, just put in your name. So for me, we have tutorial, and then select what you want. So weapon, we're going to be doing a blunt in this tutorial, but they don't have that. So we're just going to do sword, and then you're going to hit generate template. Inside the build area, it's going to put your thing alphabetically. So mine T, that's with the T's. And then you're going to have the weapon, the icon, and the config. We will go more in depth on those in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to explain some stuff with the weapons. So first off, the most important thing you need to know is prefabs and how to edit in them. So at the start, most people put their prefab into the scene and then start working on it. But that doesn't actually change anything for the thing in here in the folder. So when you build your mod, none of those changes will happen. So what you're going to want to do is go to your prefab and double click it. You're going to be in an area with a blue void. That means you're inside the prefab and anything you do will save. So second off, let's say you're making a sword, whatever. You're going to want to know how big it is. So go ahead and click gizmos up here. And then if you don't see anything still, either you're in the wrong area or you don't have show example weapon on. And then you can change what it is, gun, axe, whatever. We're just going to do sword. And then some things to look at here. These boxes, this is the stab object. Because we are doing a blunt weapon, we don't need that. So I'm going to go down here to stab object and then delete that. So click and then remove component. And then we'll go more in depth on that in a different tutorial. Now, the most important thing in this mod proj is going to be the addresses. So I'm going to explain these a bit more in detail. So what the addresses are, is they're how the game reads everything. It's how we know what effect to use, what weapon to spawn, and everything. So the addressable helper is very useful for getting everything set up, but you need to understand how it works and what everything is so that if something goes wrong, you know what's wrong and you know how to fix it. So first off, right here, all of these are all of the things that are addressed. This is everything in the mod proj. You don't want everything in the mod proj. You want your one folder, otherwise everything will be built and everything will be added into the game. and you don't want everything from the mod project added with your mod. So go up here to the addressable paths, hit 1, and then you're going to want to go ahead and put in your path. So right here we see assets build in common, but ours is asset build tutorial. So you're going to want to copy that name, or you can type it out and then replace the common with that, and that's going to be your folder. So that's going to just make sure everything in just this gets the correct addresses. Now, next up, the prefix. What is the prefix and why do we use it? So as a quick example, let me just go ahead and create some addresses. So if I go in here, you can see our address is weapon, WMD, or weapon, I actually don't remember what this stands for, and then tutorial. So this is our address plus our weapon name. If we didn't have addresses and one person named their mod tutorial, and then the next person also had it named tutorial, it would default to one of those weapons because it can't read multiple addresses. It doesn't have context on what you want. It only has the address. The address lets us have something to differentiate the two tutorial weapons, or whatever, like if you're doing sword from an anime, let's say you're doing Kikoku. If two people do Kikoku, it's going to have the same address. So the prefix lets us have a differentiator for that. So like for me, I do, I used to do aura. Now I just do weapon because I worked for Battle Talent. I worked on weapons. So I just made it easier for me differentiate my work from the Sidedream work. Or I know our other modder, Goro. He just does Goro. I know Full Metal Modder. He does this. You can make whatever you want. If there's, it can be as long as you want, but I would keep it small for you. It just depends on whatever you want. Try to simplify your name or whatever like screen name you use, or just a specific 3 letters you like, or any combination of letters you like. Just something to differentiate from everyone else. So for me, I'm just going to do tutorial for this for these series of examples, just to keep it simple and differentiate from everything else. So what you'll see now is if I hit clear and then create and refresh addressable names, we'll go in here and you'll see now tutorial. So we have the weapon path, so weapon, that's because it's in the weapon folder, tutorial _ because that's our prefix, and then tutorial because that's the name of the thing. That's the basics of why we use addressables and how they work. There's some more complex information on it, like if I were to make a script folder, like we see in here, this doesn't go script _ like you see from or script dash like you see in the weapons or the icon. That goes Lewis script or Lewis scripts, one of the two. If you're doing weapons, that's just something to remember if you want to manually do addresses, but the addressable helper will automatically do it if not. If you ever want to check all your addressables really quick, just compare them, you can go into the window, asset management, addressables, groups, and then default local groups, and that's going to show you all of your things. So you can see we've got a weapon, icon, config, and our entry. Our entry file, you're not going to touch that. Just make sure it's addressed. And that's the basics of how addressables work, why they're important. If you have this set up wrong, it's not going to work. If you have your config set up wrong, it's not going to work. So we're going to go more in depth on how to set up the config with the correct addressables later on, but just know that is what the addressables are and why we use them. All right, next up, we're going to go over a few things in the Unity. So if you've never used Unity before, everything's going to be a bit confusing. So our transform, that's basically just how the weapon is, where it's moving. So if we go up here and do the transform, you see if I move this Y1, that means it's going to go up 1. Our wireframe does not follow that because that's just an example, but this is where the actual weapon would be. If we put anything into this, like if I go in here and put this here, you'll see this is following it. If I move it to 0, it's going to go back down. That is what the position of the transform is. The rotation, that's going to be just the rotation. That makes sense. And scale, obviously, that's the size of everything. So that's the basics of transform. If you want to quickly move stuff around, you have W key for this, E for rotation, you have R for scale, and then that's all of these. T, that's for this little dot here. I don't think that's working right now for some reason. That's odd. But next up, you have Y. That's basically everything put together. You have your scale, you have your rotation. What you're going to be doing is just the basics, just, W and E for moving and rotation. But it's good for you to know what's what. So next, I'm going to explain the rigid body. So what the rigid body does is it lets stuff move around with physics in-game. So, if it lets stuff fall, it lets stuff get pushed around by other stuff. Mass, that's how heavy it is. Drag, that is the so it'll slow the movement, kind of keeping it, drag. Angular drag, it's the same thing but for rotation. Use gravity. If you want your thing to float but still have physics, you can turn use gravity off. Kinematic, that's basically as if it doesn't have a rigid body. It'll be stuck in place, unable for physics to affect it, but it still has all of that stuff for the rigid body. Interpolation, don't mess with it. Same with the collision detection. Unity, the battle talent has been built around the continuous speculative, so just keep it on that. And then these two you won't have to touch. They're just info while it's running. If you want to freeze the rotation for some reason, or the position so that it can rotate freely, let's say you're making a lever or something, you can freeze the rotation or freeze the position and then freeze the two rotations so that it can only move like this. But for every weapon, you're not going to be using that. I just want to explain how everything works. Next up is going to be the interact weapon. So I'm going to go over everything simply in here, but this is just the brain of the weapon. It has all the data, everything you need for the weapon to actually work. So first off, durability. Obviously the durability, when you hit stuff, it'll go down. If you use a gun to parry, it'll go down twice. So what you're going to want to do is just set that to whatever you want, however much durability, or if you want it to be infinite, you can do -1. You will also do that for spells or something, just so it doesn't break while using it. Now the interact type, if we hover over here, you can see, fragile for bows, guns, basically anything you shouldn't be able to parry with, or that you shouldn't be using for defending. Solid, that's shield, so anything that will block a strong attack or anything easily. And then tough, that's for, as it says, the environment or traps. Default, that's going to be for your weapons, axes, anything that, it isn't super easy to parry with, but it isn't fragile like a gun. Next up, guard points. This is basically where the enemy will try to move their weapon to defend against. So if I put it down here at the handle, the enemy will try to move their weapon to protect against this point. If I move it over here, they'll try to protect against this point. It's not needed, but if you want to have the weapon or the enemy guard better, you can add it on as just a transform. So how you would do that is you would just right-click in this area, create empty. I'm just going to name it guard point. And you can just go back in here and put that there. And then move it wherever you want. So let's just say here. That's not in the right spot. Just say here. Okay. Next up, grab. These settings are going to be complicated for you to understand, especially if you're new, but these are just the settings for a configurable joint on the hand that basically just guides the weapon. And this helps, weight, swing. It just helps it feel more like a weapon. I wouldn't recommend messing with these individually for a while. I would just use these defaults down here, and as you can see, they're changing this stuff up here. So if you want a hammer, spear, claymore, those are there just to make it easier on you. Don't really mess with these too often, but that's what they are. Allow second hand. If you want the weapon to be grabbed two-handed, you can go ahead and add that back, or add that on. Now, it does not mean this one attached line down here, that's where we can grab it. It does not mean that one attached line will let you grab with both hands. You will need two attached lines if you want two-handed grabbing. It just means that if you have two attached lines, you can grab both of them at the same time. Next up, be able to show grab. This is basically, can you grab this weapon or not? So if you don't want it to be grabbable, you can either, remove all the attached lines and it won't be grabbable, or you can turn this on or off. This is usable if you're doing a script and you want to make it so in some states you can grab the weapon, some states you can't. You can toggle this on and on in script, but for you, for everyone in most cases, that's going to stay on. Enable auto tick two hand. That means basically if I have a weapon with a weird handle, it's going to try to better match the hand to the actual collider instead of just using the default hand poses. That means if like I have a sphere, it will try to make the hand wrap around that sphere correctly instead of doing the default sword hand grip. And that just means you get a better thing. You're not going to need that for most things, but again, like a sphere, especially a sphere, or anything with a weird grab, you're going to want to turn that on. Okay, next up, attach list. I went over this a second ago. The attach list just holds all the attach lines. So if I want 2 attach lines, if I want to grab this weapon twice, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it. And then I'm going to drag the first attach line into the dependency attach object. The dependency attach object just means, hey, can I grab this thing right now? If the other one is grabbed, yes. If the other one isn't grabbed, no, I cannot grab with this attach line. Basically, it just means you won't see 2 attach lines when trying to grab just one. And then once this one's grabbed, this one will show up. So once you have that, you can add it into the list. If you don't have it into the list, it won't be grabbable. Or if you have a nil attach object, or here, none, if you have it null, then it will cause the hand to go at like 2 frames per second when near the weapon. If you see the hand doing that, you have a null attach line. You can just go in here and add it back in. So if, you have that none, or here, you have that missing one, that's why. So you can just go ahead and go in there and fix it. Next up, gaze. That's just down here. That's how it can read the name and the description whenever you hover over it with your hand. When you're trying to read the description in-game, that's how those work. So this will automatically be set up, but if it's not, you can just go down to your gaze object and add it on. Next up, the grab distance limit. That's if you want to be able to grab it from a distance, you have it off. But if you want it so that you have to be up close to it, like let's say I'm making a lever. I don't want to be able to remote grab that lever. I want to have to be in there and grabbing it and pulling it down. I would turn that on, and that means I have to physically be up close. I can't remote grab it. Okay, item types. These aren't messed with often. Just don't mess with it. If you're making a spell, that's going to be gem as the second one, but they'll automatically be set up. So just don't mess with the item types. They shouldn't be much use to you. Mount attaches. This is how it attaches to either the back or the 2 hips. So let's say I want this mount attach. Basically, you're going to want to keep it near the handle or the hilt, depending on what kind of weapon you have. If I have like a gun, I'm probably going to move that like to the a bit above the trigger, but it's just where it mounts on the body. Real quick, I'm going to explain these arrows so you understand what they actually are. So right now we're in global mode, so I'm going to explain the global X, Y, and Z. So Z, that is forward, or this blue line. As you can see, I'm moving the blue line forward and backwards. So forward, that's positive Z. Backwards, that's negative Z. We have right, which is this red line. That's going to be X. If I move it, you'll see X. And then left is negative Z. And then up, that is Y, or this green arrow. And then down, negative Y. So in the local thing, you'll see they don't match correctly. That's because we have a rotation here. In local, even if I'm moving along the local X, it's going to be moving along the world Z because we have that rotation. Just keep in mind that this will always use world. As we move this around, you'll see everything doesn't move as it would if it was correctly positioned. As you can see, up is this, forward is forward. But when it's local, or when it's rotated, it's going to have different local rotations and directions. Just keep that in mind for anything. What I would do is I would make sure, for most of this, you should use global, just so that your weapons are facing the correct way. So in this, we're always going to want our blade tip to be on the forward direction, and we're always going to want the flat side to be up, so this. And that'll just give you proper rotations, which will make everything like stabs easier, and it'll work properly with some weapons, or some mods like Phantom's Grasp or the upcoming Universal Connector. That'll just make everything easier for you in the long run. Now, back to mount attach, you only need one. It will only read the first one, so just have that one. It should be linked, and then put it wherever you want. So again, like I want it at the hilt, and that makes the best look. Next up, can paint. That's basically if blood is allowed on the weapon. If you don't want blood on the weapon, you can just turn that off. Enchant level. This is still a bit confusing to me, but it should be the state the weapon is in, the enhance. If it's at -1, I think it causes issues when enchanting where it can't be enchanted. So go ahead and hit it to 0, or you can set it to a higher number if you want. But just, since it's usually just for code, but just set it to 0 for now. Now, enchant trigger calls. This is if you want the weapon to be enchantable. You're going to want to read this. But basically, we're going to have a collider when we do colliders in the next tutorials. And that's going to be along the blade, most likely. And that will allow you to enchant with spells. And then the renderers, that's what should be affected. Like, it will create a copy of that renderer. That's a bit more confusing. I will explain that more in detail while actually making the weapon. And then allow enchantment, that's if any of this should actually be allowed. And then this gizmo just shows the sword. Next up, ragdoll hit info object. This is the damage, basically, and also any information like stuns, how easy it should be to knock out enemies, stuff like that. So we have a link in the tutorial, in the description of the tutorial, to the hit info and collision effects. This is all the hit infos. If you have something that would work better, like let's say we're making a bullet, we have bullet. If we're making a like sword slash katana slash, we're going to use fly slash. Just for like this weapon, or like a sword, you would use sword. For the weapon we're making, this one here, you can see that's metal. So it's probably good to just go metal. We could also, I'm pretty sure there's a blunt, but just metal works for us. And then the collision effect. This is, it's in the same thing. This is just, you know, should it spark, should it, you know, the noise it makes, and then the collision it spawns. So like meat, that's going to do blood. Bone is going to do kind of, you know, the effect when you hit a skeleton. Wood, all of this, it just shows what effect should be done. So for us, we've got, I'm just going to do weapon blunt, because that's what's correct for this, and because we're doing that hammer, and that's how that works. Interact trigger, this is for skills. If you're not doing a skill, this is not going to be important to you, so we will not be going over this until the later tutorials that have skills. And then the gaze object, this is your description and your name. That's going to be from the config. It'll pull them from here. What you can do is you can just go in here, right click, or no, it's right here, just pull gaze info, and that's going to just automatically set it up for you correctly. And then you can mess with these, but just keep it as gaze. All right, and that's how everything in the mod proj for weapons work. Guns, I'll go more in depth with those later. But for now, I'm going to show a few other things you can use. Most important, if you're making something heavy, like if I go into this sword giant, you'll see right here, this yellow dot, this is the rigid body in it. This basically just shows where is the center of mass and how should the tensor be. So the tensor, this is a reason why we need that proper setup where, you know, forward is along the blade. This tensor, this is proper for a heavy weapon. If you want just a normal weapon, it's normally just going to be this, where these two will move normally, but the forward, like the jab, is kind of heavier. This gives you that nice swing feel, and then for heavy weapons, you get this. And then the center of mass, again, that's that yellow dot. You want to move it to wherever your mass would be. Like if you have like a hammer with like a massive head at the end, you're going to put the thing up here near the hammer head. And that just makes it swing more realistically. And then secondly, we're going to explain the weapon trails. So you can just go in search trail, or you can just add a game object and then add the X weapon trail yourself. But if you just add the trail from the search, that's already set up correctly. So start point and end point, those are where it should start and end. So we want our trail to start at the hilt and end just before the tip of the blade. So like right up here. And I'm going to move those back a bit just so they're better aligned with the actual part of the weapon. And then you have your material. So that's going to be the slash material. This will basically, it's just the slash. If you have a custom texture you want. Like let's say you're making something with like a windy slash. If you have a texture that'll work well for a slash like that, you can go ahead and add that in here. And you don't have to use specifically this particle. There's stuff like add center glow, which I like, that has more customization, because I'm not sure if we have noise in here. We have some noise. You can add noise. You can have stuff move around. But that's not, important to this. But this will give you like, a cooler slash, depending on what you're doing. It's just good for you to know that. But for now, you can just use the basic slash if you want to do a slash. This will update its color for like if you're doing a charge the slash. This is how it'll know how to do the red effect when doing a charged attack, or anything else you want with slashes. This is just better if you want anything to look nicer. If you're doing like a blunt weapon, you don't need a slash, but like a sword, it'll make your weapon look nicer. People will appreciate it more. Okay, last few things to cover before the end of this tutorial. We have the project settings. So in here, this is how your mod is going to be named. You don't have to mess with this, but like modproj_example. When I'm done making this mod and I build it, this will be the folder name, and this is how you basically change that folder name so that it's correct. For stuff like the Kopeshrang, it's just named Kopeshrang. It's just how you name the mod folder. Nothing else in here really matters. Oh yes, something I forgot to cover. Interact layer. This is important for everything. If you want it to work, like if you have an attached line that right here, this will not work because it is default layer. That is wrong. That is another reason I don't like using the tutorial or the template generator. It isn't always right. This needs to be interact or it will not show up at all. It will not work. Anything you're doing with a weapon, just make sure it's interact layer. If you have stuff here, like, this is default, I can just go up to the top, click interact, and then click it again and hit yes, change children. And now everything in it is lower. So the model should be interact layer. The attached lines, mount attach, everything in there needs to be interact layer or it will cause issues. Now, the icon generator, I'll go more in depth on this later, but basically you can just grab your weapon, put it in here, and then it'll show up. You can move it around, and then you can save PNG directly to the icon folder, and that'll make it so that you have the icon. You don't need to do anything extra. You can change, background if you want color or a different texture, everything. It's just a nice little tool. And then building. Building, this is how everything gets put into a mod folder, a mod file. So if I, what you would want to do is hit build all bundles once you know everything is done. If you do build all bundles and then you get an error down here, this will tell you what's wrong. So like right here, WMD_tutorial and item config, this hasn't been changed. So this is wrong. This is not the proper address. So what you do is bring the proper address into there. And then when I do it, it will work, but we're not doing that right now. But just know if you get errors, that will tell you what's wrong. This will take a while to build for your first time, but after the first build, it'll get a lot faster. That's about it for this. If you have any questions, you can leave it in the description, or I might cover it in the next tutorials. Make sure you watch all of those. If you're still having issues, then you can, go ahead and ask. You can join the Discord. I'll be there. We'll have all the other modders there who can go ahead and help you. There's also the docs as shown before. This has all the stuff. If you have any questions or want to get like a script from this has that. But that's the basics of Unity and what's going on in the mod proj. That's all. We're going to move on to the next tutorial that should be on screen now, and I'll see you there.